In studio right now is County Executive Anthony Picente. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so I know we have to start with the big story, and boy, it seems like there's been an investigation going on. Can you reveal that? Or
I really can't.
Okay.
I'm not at liberty or even of knowledge.
But your
of a lot of
DWI
this
guy
stuff.
can't be driving around drunk, can't be allegedly carrying cocaine in the vehicle.
No, and it came as a shock to all of us. It's a tragic situation, but it's one in which you can relate to the point that these things sometimes go unnoticed. That that you can know somebody as well as you do, and that they can work with. This is a person who worked with a variety of professionals in law enforcement and in substance abuse, yet it was undetected. And it's the same thing to all of us, and that's why he could no longer stay in that role, obviously.
And this is interesting because for you to make so you didn't put him on an administrative leave, which means you know more than the rest of us know right now.
Well, but no, it's not that. It clearly is the fact that this is a person who was charged with a driving while intoxicated program, prevention, education, et cetera, program. That's the county program for against all things impaired driving, and to have the charges brought against him that appear to be obviously without. They wouldn't be charged if they weren't founded. Just allow or don't allow him to remain in that role, and so therefore, it had to be. Okay. That's swift and unfortunate. It's not a pleasurable thing, but it had to be.
I have people already asking how would one apply and what are the credentials in order to apply for the job.
Well, yeah,
you're going to have to fill this.
We'll repost it over the next couple of days. In the interim, I'm just trying to piece everything together. Yesterday, obviously, Kevin Revere is the emergency services director. That kind of falls a little bit under his purview, but. Later today, I think we're going to make an announcement of an interim for about a month until we can, because we need someone in there. We got a lot of programs going on over the next, as we enter into the springtime. This is a busy time all year round, but as we enter into spring, then we have some specific programs that are in place that we need to address, and so we'll have somebody in there just in the interim for about a month, and we'll post the position in the next couple of days.
This is I believe this is certainly a job you know quite well. Because part of your career started in that position
with you and
back in the day.
Back in the day, as they say.
But a lot of contact with students, with kids.
Absolutely.
This is not the message you can be sending to children.
And again, it's it's not, and it's an unfortunate situation. But I hope he gets hopefully can get the help he needs and can move on in some facet. Of his life in that regard, and get away from that addiction. But I think it we talked a lot about it at the speech that day before. Obviously, this is this is a wake up call to a lot of people. I think, and not just in this situation of ours, but throughout. And we've been seeing it. I talked about the opiate crisis, a little bit different, yet addictive in nature, and that's what happens here.
I want to just clarify from our standpoint, we don't necessarily know everything that authorities know. Based on what is released, the way it works is pretty simple. You're innocent until proven guilty. So from our standpoint, this is somebody who's been charged with this, and everybody is innocent until they face
go through the
court of law
adjudication,
or whatever process ends up they choose to take. So with that out of the way, you did talk a lot about addiction and opioid abuse and that sort of thing. This would kind of fall in line with that. It's a real problem, and if it's something that you want to tackle, not just tackling DWI, but also the opioid crisis, maybe with the same aggression, right?
We compared the two in regards to the overall campaigns that have been lodged over the years. And when you talk about I mentioned in my speech the other day, my first part of my career was spent as the DWI coordinator doing those those programs and that issue. And when that program started, there was an epidemic of sorts, at least in particular in New York State and throughout the country, because that was when SAD, Students Against Drunk Driving, was beginning, MAD was beginning, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, all of the different drunk driving campaigns had begun, and that was in the early 80s. And the number of fatalities in Oneida County, and I got a pretty good memory. I don't have exact numbers in my head, but they were in the 20s, and even I think one year might have hit 30. There was a lot of people dying as a result of alcohol-related deaths. I think may have been just 28. I think may have been the high point, but nonetheless, 28, big 24, number. 26. Those are big numbers. So we've gone. We've come 30 years with a program that really invested heavily in education and prevention and treatment and all the like, and law enforcement as well. Obviously, without that, you can't fix this. And I compared it to opiates. Opiates the other day, and I had, as an example, people stand up at the speech. We had people audience members standing up, representing the number of average deaths of opiates. 43 people in the last since 2013, a year. Not since 2013, a year, dying as a result of opioid. Whereas that same time period, 4 in drunk driving. And there, while people could say, well, there's differences, there's really not. There's addictions, there's issues, there's people that believe they can function, under the influence of whether it's pain medicine and drugs, and then moving whatever they move on to, or whether it's alcohol or the illegal drugs. So. It was to talk about, how do we, we've really reduced the numbers here, and we've done it in a very deliberative way that can be done the same with opiates, a little more intense. That's why I said we're going to redouble. We're going to invest more in education, in prevention, and in other programs. And the goal is to knock that number down, and it's getting, but it is getting to be of epidemic numbers when you have that kind of an issue.
It's funny when you talk to we all remember talking to our parents about what it was like back in the day with drinking.
Sure.
And old policeman Joe would be like, "Oh, you're not there. You are drunk again. Let me get you home."
Yeah. Why are you driving again?
And boy, it's incredible how I feel about that, drinking and driving, how my kids feel about it today. And that's really all education over the years. Now you fast forward to today and you talk about the opioids and my situation in the hospital. Sure. I came home with pills just in case, and it was oxycodone. And I'm scared to death to take those pills.
Yeah, I had the same a year ago. I had back issues and had some injections and such, and then I remember getting the prescription. I think I talked about it and here or somewhere else. I got a prescription of like 90 pills.
Wow.
What are you going to do? What was I going to do?
Yeah.
I don't think I took 2 of them.
And
it was just, but it was, again, that fear. But that goes into the whole other aspect of what we talked about with pharmaceuticals like big tobacco and what was done over the years in terms of the overprescribing and the constant push for that. And what does it lead to? It leads to addiction, and it leads
today.
to young people and people of all ages looking for other means to get that feeling.
All right, let's throw a few things that we didn't get anybody calling up and saying, I can't believe he's saying Herkimer College is going to merge with MVCC. In years past, there's always something. But this time it really wasn't. But there's a lot of things that have been happening. One of the issues, though, that people were questioning is saying, how can you say that our area, and is it Oneida County, is it the region, when it comes to tourism, number 2 outside of New York City? What are the numbers on that?
The numbers are accurate. And when you look at the region in the central New York region, in which we are a big part of, and what our impact is, and clearly Turning Stone has that big piece of that market because of what they attract. But the fact of what they are able to attract then branches out into all the other pieces and the other things.
So does that include Cooperstown, Old Fort?
It would.
It
would include the region and the central, the Leatherstocking or what have you. But when you look at the center of New York State, and in particular, that's where we are, dead center. But the literal impact from Oneida County. And in those numbers with Turning Stone, but with other things,
sure.
with the Stanley, with the Aud, you have to count that in because you have, regardless of the fact that you have season ticket holders, you have people coming in for other events,
sure.
and other
hotels are being filled
for
up,
those for those games as well. And that's why when we look at Nexus, when we look at the next phases of all that, that's the attraction, that's the revenue generator.
I have to tell you, I am not surprised by the numbers projected with the Nexus Center.
I mean,
Youth sport. All you have to do is take a look to the south and just in the Cooperstown area and see what baseball, not Major League Baseball, but what youth baseball has done down there. It's incredible.
They can't keep the hotels vacant.
Well, I'll tell you, I was kind of surprised. You're talking 1.6 million annual visitors and 1,000 jobs. That's. I did kind of, whoa, holy cow, that's huge.
That's what a full build out too. I mean, so that really does incorporate a great deal. But the visitors numbers are amazing when you look at and we compared this to Marlboro, Mass, because that's really the one that has the other. And they have 9 rinks, but they started out with I think 4 and initially, and with one main rink, and then now they have 8. Smaller rinks, because what you have is people coming in and out constantly, weekends, 3-4 day weekends and playing. 60,
they're traveling. They're coming from all over the
60,
place.
70 games.
Yeah.
It's just once one game ends, the next
Well, it's the
20
tournaments.
Minutes, the tournaments. Well,
even
that's
these
it.
individual tournaments make money on their own. These AAU tournaments and stuff.
And the fees for the time, but then the offshoot, the hotels, as you said, the restaurants, the shopping, and that's why we have to build upon all of those aspects in that area and beyond to.
And what is the timeline for Nexus?
Well, Nexus, we're really want to get in the ground in this summer, and so as soon as we can line up a couple pieces of financing, which I'm working with the Aud Authority on, and I think we can begin. Further preparation of the site, and then it's a build, because there's not. I mean, it's the site is ready, and in many ways the permitting will be easy, and we can move forward.
I have to tell you that, as you know, I spent some time in the hospital, and we were all over. I went to my wife and I went to Boston. We were looking at Michigan. We were looking certainly outside the area, because what do they tell you? First thing somebody finds out, you got to get out of town. You got to do it somewhere else.
Sure.
But we found that the same story I was getting in Boston, I was getting in Michigan, I was getting in Utica. And the surgeon, Dr. Blancafleur, has the robotics program here. We chose, and I think prior, without letting you know what was going on, I talked to you about the confidence of the patient.
Sure.
And I had a little of that. I was reluctant, but we chose to do it here. So I learned a couple things. Number one, we have great doctors, great nurses, great staffs in our hospitals here. But we have a facility that I think it was Mike yesterday that said, you realize we were dealing with a civil war when St. E's first opened. Now, that facility's been around for a long time, not quite as far as back as the one that we're in now. But still, it's an aging facility. I can tell you 10 things off the top of my head that I feel were difficult for me as a patient, but probably 25 things that were difficult for doctors and for nurses to be able to take care of people. We need this hospital.
We do, and that is, that was a big part of what I talked about again at the beginning and at the ending of my remarks the other day, and contrast it to at the beginning a little bit about the Amazon debacle, and as I put it, in New York, and how
you got to take a shot at that.
How even though the smallest of opposition can derail certain things and lose money. And
good example.
We're past. I said again, we're past an alternate site. We need to move forward, and we need to move forward now, and we need to move forward because the future of what you just mentioned is that we do have great doctors here, no question about them. I mean, some of them are very good personal friends, and others that we work with, and the nursing staff and the people. What's happened though is classic in not just your situation but in others. And I don't say this so before people say, well, now I'm an expert on hospitals. I'm not. But what happens is what happens with every family and every family member or individual is it's like looking at the outside. The old adage, you can't judge a book by its cover. We all do.
Right.
Unfortunately, that
absolutely
is something that happens, and especially in healthcare more than anything else.
But we walked into
look at a facility that is old and antiquated and clustered, and not not welcoming in certain ways, not by the fault of them, but just by age.
Patient confidence.
It just says it says then that this doctor's not going to help.
I got to say, we went to Boston. The directions perfect. Everything was laid out for us. We drove in. There was a garage. It was easy to get where. When we walked into the lobby, there was someone playing a baby grand piano. They were serving up coffee to everybody. It was a pleasant experience.
We took my father-in-law to Columbia Presbyterian about 2
Same
years
thing,
ago
I'm sure,
for a heart valve replacement, and it was you pull up. First of all, there was valet parking and all that stuff, but the lobby, and then that place is just like a city within a city.
It is, yeah.
I remember getting we got literally lost because buildings connect, and asked somebody, and it turned out to be, unbeknownst to me until I realized it was one of the administrators of the hospital who then guided us personally to and handed us over to other people that made sure we got to where we got. But the layout,
there's
the
a
openness
flow.
of the
There's
space, the flow. It was just and that you look at that and say, this is what people need to see.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I was always focused on we're going to bring in new doctors. We're going to bring in. There's new technology and there's new opportunities, but at the same time, I want to feel comfortable when I walk into our hospital.
With all due, and to all as I stated, and the physicians that are here and their skill level, which is it's just second to none as well, and their manners and their community service, etc. But like all of us, they're aging. Where's the next generation going to come from? That's something we talk about all the time. Not just in in government and education and whatever. And but healthcare, we really need to know. And if a young doctor comes out of medical school, whether they come out of Columbia or whether they come out of Johns Hopkins or wherever they come out of, and are looking around, I'm not sure they're going to look at an old hospital.
A news facility cannot hurt.
Facility will definitely help that.
Yeah. We're talking to County Executive Anthony Picente. A quick break, or can we keep going for another 5 or 7 minutes? Sure. Your call. Do you have another 5 minutes?
I'm fine.
Because I'm all backed up as always here, so you know how that goes. Unless you want to hang for some beer, which we can do.
No, I can't do that.
So what else? What are the other key issues that you want people to take away from this year's address?
We did a great deal of recap of the things that we're proud of and that continue to move forward.
Flooding, school safety, two big ones.
All of that. But we did talk about, obviously, we talk about the opioid piece that we just mentioned. We talk about the hospital. In with the hospital, I talked about with the new director of economic development on the county end to look at what else is around the downtown area and around the hospital. I want him to go to Boston, to Pittsburgh, to Buffalo, to places where hospitals have been built, expanded, et cetera, and see what's around that, not just the medical facilities that can complement it, but also the other amenities that go along with it. So that's another piece of the economic development aspect of it. The area of, we talked about eradicating veterans homelessness, which really is a big piece. I created a homeless unit in this last budget cycle and working collectively, and then I talked about blending the offices of DSS, social services, aging, veterans, youth, into one umbrella agency that can deal more directly with especially areas of homelessness and especially on veterans and eradicating that by 2022. That's I think it's some say it's ambitious. We know that veteran population better and better each day. And those are things that we can reach into.
Well, they were there for us.
They were.
We darn well should be there for them. There's no doubt about it.
I guess I was just going to follow up on that. I did think that was kind of ambitious because when we look at homelessness, the problem of homelessness, I think I'm certainly not a doctor, but I think sometimes the studies say a lot of this involves mental health.
Sure.
Right? So it's
No
not
question.
it's not that there's not a program that there isn't support for veterans out there. It's either they're not interested in it, or maybe they've got other things they've got to deal with.
And that's common with all levels of homelessness, whether they're not veterans or not. But what happens with veterans is they do come home, and that whether it's the mental illness and you could point it to depression or PTSD that leaves them in a state of uncertainty, and then not being able to connect with the mechanism to get them back on their feet, or to get them stable, or to understand what's available to them, and then it spirals into those areas. And we know that, again, we can identify that number a lot easier than others, and zero in on it. That doesn't mean we're forgetting the other homeless population at all, but with a place like the Veterans Outreach Center and places like our clinic, we do see them come through there, and we're able to identify them. We're also able to identify them in social services, and that was one of the things we talked about years ago. They may be in social services. They shouldn't be there. We should have another place for them, or they may be wandering through the system, so to speak.
I want to ask, you talked about opioids and drunk driving. You also got into some marijuana. You said you are for it medically, but against it recreationally. However, am I mischaracterizing that?
No, you're absolutely right.
You're going to hold a series of like town halls, and you want to hear from farmers to talk about maybe what the potential impact is.
I want to hear from everybody. I really want to hear from everybody. And yes, I've said I've been medicinally. I believe that there has been value, and I've supported that. And obviously, listening to what the professionals on that. Recreational, I've always had, and it goes back to what we started talking about today. My career in the beginning of DWI, and it always believed, and still philosophically have the belief of a gateway drug that leads you into other things.
And you have a sheriff who is extremely
I'm not changing that view. I mean, and I'm not buying into that. Well, it can be used recreationally.
Will Oneida County opt out?
Well, I think that's one of the things. It's going to be hard to opt out, and that's one of the things I want to do this series of meetings about. Not just because I want people, to make the decision for me, but I do want to understand a little more of how this is going to impact. But as it stands right now, if we opt out and say no retail sales, that doesn't mean that can be used, and that doesn't mean we don't get hit with the circumstances of that.
Your police are going to have to handle issues.
Not just the police, the overall issues of control of manufacturing still can take place and all that. So you may get the issue without the benefit of how do you fix some of these things, or how do you benefit at least to deal with those issues.
You might be surrounded by counties who've all opted in.
And then it's I don't want to compare it. It's like when they checkerboard these kind of things, that causes us more problems. We saw that, and I'm not comparing the two, but it's just a relative in the fireworks issue,
right?
Where you have where you can go from one county to the next, but you're still faced with dealing with an issue, yet you don't have the control over it or the revenue stream to help alleviate it or fix it or just deal with it. And we are going to have to deal with marijuana in some way. It's evident that it's coming at us. And so my point is, I want to hear more about it, how we do that. I know we'd be limited in the retail amounts of the retail enterprises that each county can have. And then the revenue that comes to that has got to be determined how that's, where does that go?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to hear from people about.
All right. Anything else?
There's a lot in there. There's a lot more in there. There's the Innovative Collective that we talked about at the end of investing, into existing businesses, entrepreneurs to grow that rather than looking for the big bites all the time outside, as I mentioned. With that, and we have a group of people like Martin Babinick, Frank DeRoss, Anessa Carbone, others who are looking at this model that was established in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, but is fastly moving across into communities to look at the innovation collectiveness of what a community has and how we grow. So there's a lot more in there.
I have somebody pelting me why I'm not asking questions about your upcoming opponent, and I'll explain because I don't feel that this interview is worthy of lying scumbags. And that's how I feel. I was drawn into that, coming out and saying horrible things about people, including myself, including you. It's easy to throw stones. I just wonder how you look at yourself in the mirror. That's how I feel. So even though I guess I have brought it up,
sure,
I've done it without swearing, and Jeff's happy about that. So while I was in the hospital having surgery for cancer, this horrific human being was out doing what he was doing, and it's disgusting, and I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Well, I have no comment about him or anything he has to say.
I feel the same way, although I guess I did just